And today, let's just say you wanted to make shadows, but you're not too familiar with the brush tool. Because the only thing we have to do is, of course, open up Photoshop, and then we'll pull in our image here. So I have this little smiley face here, and I am going to name this smiley face. Okay, so let's make a copy of that. Control J. Or you could just take your photo and drag it down to this plus sign right here. Okay, so we'll name our copy of that shadow. Okay, so that's done. So now let's take the shadow layer and place this below our smiley face. So now what we do is, while our shadow layer is selected, we'll hit Shift and click in this middle handle here and pull it down like so. There we go. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make this a shadow color. So what we'll do is double click on the shadow layer here, and that pulls up our layer styles. And then we'll go to color overlay. Now in color overlay, you have several options. But we are just going to focus on this color box right here. So we'll click on this color box. And let's see, let's go down to black because that's normally shadow colors. And click OK and OK. And look at that. All right, now let's move this down. And that's it. But let's just make it a little bit more spicy though. Let's see what we want to do with a background color here. What colors should we? So let's, 1 second, let's zoom in real quick and click over here on our foreground color. And let's see, we could pick a color that's going to complement the picture here. Maybe something like so. Hit OK. Now we'll hit G to grab our paint bucket tool, zoom out and drop it right here on our background layer. There we go. That looks good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and for some reason I want to put a gradient on this background. I don't know, man. The woes of being artistic. Oh my goodness. I just see a gradient on the background. So what we'll do is let's double click on the background here and gradient overlay. That looks good. And that's the perfect color I needed as well. So this is reversed. So we'll just hit reverse and then we'll put the darker part at the bottom and the lighter part at the top and click OK, and that looks good. Now the shadow is awfully harsh, so we need to dim it down or basically blur it so it's not so sharp. Okay, let's go up here and click on our shadow layer and go up to filter, go to blur, let's search for Gaussian blur here, and then we'll blur it just a little bit, 6.8 pixels. Now this all depends on the size of the document, guys, so it would change from image to image, but this isn't really doing very much. It's not very noticeable right now, so I'll go over just a little bit more. I think that's looking good. 45.6. Hit OK. Now let's go ahead and grab this shadow and let's just flatten it, tighten it up just a tad bit more. Hit Shift and drag down a little bit. All right, there it is, and that looks good. But the artistic part of me tells me I want it to be a little bit shorter in length there. Let's pull this over, drop it in the center, apply that, and there it is. That looks good. Okay, now let me drop the opacity a tad bit. There it is, a floating image. Now let's get even fancier. Let's just say you want an object behind the smiley face, but you still aren't using any brushes. Okay, so we can do that as well. So with our shadow and smiley face selected, we'll select both of these. And then we'll link these layers here. So we'll right click and hit link layers. So that way, once we move one, both of them move at the same time. Now let's go ahead and drop these in a group. I'm gonna hit Control G and we'll name it smiley face and shadow 1. Okay, so that looks good. The only thing we have to do now, of course, is select our smiley face and shadow 1 layer or group. Control J to duplicate that. Now, normally what I do is I lock the layer, the previous layer, just so when I'm moving things around, it doesn't get moved. So we will lock our smiley face and shadow 1 layer here. Lock that, and now we can move this one around. So let's just say if it wants to be behind a little bit, I think that would be a good place to start. Now let's make this smaller. So we'll hit Alt and click and drag like so. And we'll move it to about right here. Hit OK. Now, of course, let's take the copy group and move that underneath our first group here. There we go. So it sits behind it. Okay, awesome. So what we'll do now is we will go ahead and click on the smiley face, and let's go ahead and hit Control J. Make a copy there, and now we right click on the copy we just made and click on unlink layers. So now that layer is unlinked, so we can move it to the right. So shift and click over like so, or you could just click and drag. I think that'd be a good enough area for the shadow to cover. So now only thing we have to do, let's just double click on it, and then we will click on color overlay. Our shadow is already black, and then we will hit OK. Now look like we've already had some progress there. So what we'll do is we'll head up here to the opacity, and let's drop the opacity down to about, I don't know, let me see, 40%. Looks good. All right, that looks good. Now what we'll do is we will take our shadow layer, of course, make sure that's selected. Now remember, we had already made a style up here in blur, so only thing we have to do now is go up to filter and click on Gaussian blur. There we go. Now if you notice, the shadow is sitting outside of the face. You could leave it like that, or you can clip it to the bottom layer to where it doesn't kind of bleed out, so to speak. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and click in between our smiley face copy shadow and the smiley face. So we'll just hit Alt and clip. So see how I clipped it there? Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it a little better. So we'll unclip it by going between these layers and hitting Alt and clicking here. See how it goes? But now clip it back. There we go. So that is it. And we use 0 brushes. So sometimes people just are not familiar with the brush or how the brush works, or perhaps they may be intimidated by the brush. But just so you know now, you do not have to use a brush until you get more familiar with it. You can just use the objects that are available to you. And a wise man once told me, use what you have. So that's what we did here. And that is it, guys. I think that looks good. So before we get out of here, if you'd like to know anything about what I have going on, that information is down there in the description box, right beside the like button and right beside the subscribe button. Did you see what I did there? Did you see it? All right, guys. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.